On behalf of the Department of English, Amrita School of Arts and Sciences, I welcome Ms. Mary Suresh Iyer. Ms. Mary Suresh is a human resources professional with over 20 years of experience in the teaching industry in the USA. She teaches physics and mathematics in the suburban public schools in the Houston, Texas. She authored over 7 textbooks in math, chemistry, and English, and runs a coaching center for college entrance exams and runs two non-denominational childcare centers. Her talk for today is titled Pedagogy and the Pandemic. We welcome you, madam.
I want to actually talk about what is pedagogy. Pedagogy, as we understand, is the art and science of teaching. Now, the art and science of teaching has a very important component. It's just not teaching. We have to design, we have to first of all decide what we are going to teach. And then we have to decide the method of how we want to teach and what are the tools we need in order to deliver that lesson. And then once we're done with that, then there is an assessment part. How do you know that what you taught was actually learned? And then the loop continues again. Now, in this loop, where a teacher is designing the lesson, yes, pretty much I had a control all my life as a teacher how to design a lesson. Then delivering the lesson, delivering the lesson, that's where I have to look at each student and then what are the resources I have. And in terms of, I teach physics the whole day. So I need to look at my lab equipment. I need to look at what are the different resources I have and what kind of students am I addressing. That delivery portion is all figured out for years since I've done this for 20 years. Okay, if I'm teaching this unit, this is how I'm going to do this. So that delivery portion is a big component because unless I have the right mode and right equipment and right environment where the students are there, that delivery portion, which is an important portion where I need the interaction, is where it's going to determine whether I'm going to get the results that I'm looking for. Now, what did the pandemic do? Pandemic broke that chain. And I mean, this is nothing new. I'm pretty sure you all must have seen this. So during the pandemic, one of the things that we lost as teachers is we lost that environment where we could do the personal support. Okay, that disruption to our workplace or as in our environment where we actually conduct business. All right. So the delivery mode of the environment where we present this material to our students is kind of disrupted. And it's not just that. One of the components in the US public school system, all you need is a child. In fact, the transportation is taken care of by the school system. The moment the student sets into the class to the school building, the physical needs as in food actually is even taken care of. And there are many components. Once we lost this environment where the students were taken care of, one of the things that they lost was like, I mean, instead of as a school system, we had to also worry about, okay, what about the safety of adult supervision when the kids are supposed to be learning on their own for the most part. And then what about the food? Like here we have a schedule, like they come here, they have breakfast and they have classes and they have lunch and all of those things. What is that? How is that component going to be taken care of? So we had to kind of suspend all our activities for a little bit and then figure out the infrastructure that's required, not only in terms of technology, but also in terms of the physical needs of the students, as in like basic needs like food. That's something that we had to take over. We were standing in food drives to give food to children when they were driving in their cars. So that was another important thing. And the disruption that we looked at after we kind of settled down, like we went on a spring break. And once we went on a spring break, the kids actually thought it was an extended holiday. But the extended holiday lasted for more than like March to the end of May, which is almost 2.5 months. So whatever mode of instruction that we had for the first 3 months of the pandemic, when we suddenly had to move online, was we had what is called as a flipped classroom. So what is a flipped classroom? You provide the students with the information in some kind of video format. They're supposed to actually watch the videos on their own and then come back. And whenever they joined a session like this, all we expected them to is to ask questions. And guess what? Like 90% of the students never even logged into their computers. So we said, okay, this is not going to work, because now the responsibility of watching the videos on their own is on them, and then they're supposed to ask questions, but they're not doing the first part. So the first part is not done, so it's not going to be effective for the second part for us to teach, like to even see how much they know. Okay. And of course, the first 3 months we somehow finished our academic year. Now the bigger challenge came when we had to open the doors again in August, when the kids were coming back from the next academic year. Now, the next academic year was when we, as one of the school districts, decided that we will allow teachers to come to work, and we will also allow students to come to work. And whoever wants to stay from at home can actually virtually log into the classes. So it would be like a regular school day, except that the student had to go from the students who were in school could come to school, but the students who were at home had to log in at that particular time to that session. This was a disaster in more than one ways, because I did not know whether I was doing justice to the kids who were in front of me or the kids who were remote, because I was still teaching to the computer, because now I had to worry about, and the kids were in front of me, but they were also in front of their computers. So it will be a class full of students, like half a classroom of students that would be on their computers while I am also teaching on the computer. So it didn't make sense. It almost looked like I'm ignoring, or I'm not even paying cognizance to the students who are actually took the trouble to come here. And that was a year of just struggling with a lot of stuff. But one of the good things about pandemic, like, it's not all bad. What we have realized is, as a teaching community, the kind of innovation that I have seen in the last 1.5 years is is tremendous, in the sense that we never even realized that we had so many resources at our disposal to work through a major disruption like this and still be an effective teacher. And it all, if this pandemic happened, say 10 years ago, we would have been clueless. It happened at a time when technology has come to a stage where even remote learning was possible. Like, when I started teaching, I would always say, like, working from home for a teacher is an impossible thing. That is something that no teacher can ever do. But I was wrong. Like, as we all can see, these kinds of conferences, I mean, the modality of how to deliver the material um, through multiple ways is explored because of the pandemic. It's a disruption that none of us were ready for. But uh, at the hindsight, if it's not as disastrous as we thought. Of course, there was a lot of learning loss that we experienced. One of the other challenges that we saw was, even in a country like this, which we think that is an advanced country, where, like, you think that technology is available to everybody. Even in a country like this, we realize the cracks of where, to such an extent that we realize that 30 to 40% of our students really do not have an access. Like, ours is a school that gives a computer for them. Each student gets a computer, but 30 to 40% of our students actually did not have a reliable internet source. And there were, like, buses with internet boosters that used to kind of go through the neighborhoods and stop in each place so their kids could connect to the computers while they were at home. So the reality of the difference of the resources available to students, that made a major impact in how many students were successful and how many were not. Like, there were some parents who quickly hired a tutor to take over the learning of their children. And some of the parents, they themselves are highly educated. So one of the challenges that we're still facing is the gap in the learnings that we have. Some kids kind of lost an entire year of learning, even though they were logging into the classroom, they were doing what they were supposed to do. So because our assessments were like completely online, the kids now found a way of finding the where do I find the right answer. It's not about how do I learn the material, where do I find the right answer. So when we came back this academic year to wean them off, we actually had to kind of do a detox of too much computers. We said, okay, let's put our computers aside. Now let's actually get into the actual mode of learning. And of course, there was a lot of trauma that we had to deal with. The kids just being locked at home. When they came back, we had trouble with the interpersonal relationships that we had. We also looked at one of the crises that I have seen is a sense of not having control. Like the kids felt like they didn't have control over the events that happened at home or in school, and that kind of affected a huge population of students. And I mean, I'm not sure if the student population in India is facing this. One of the major hits for our students was we saw that the students experienced a lot of them experienced an identity crisis, like where do I belong in the, like identity crisis actually gender wise. That is an identity crisis that has kind of came about. And it's like they, because of lack of um, for a better word, a sense of routine probably. um, some of the students have taken to extreme steps where like, okay, what are the only thing that I can control? The only thing I can control is how I dress. So I'm going to express myself in a way that I dress myself in a way that I have complete control. So nobody can tell me how to dress, how not to dress. So we saw some we have seen some very drastic changes in our students, in terms of, these were the students that I taught 2 3 years ago, so these are not strangers to me. But that a sort of the expression of anger at the events that happened in teenagers, as we saw, were in very drastic ways. In some sense, look, they dress weird, and they kind of change their personality to talk differently. So it's when they got back into the classroom, either we saw students that used to be very talkative to completely become silent, or the ones that were silent have now become boisterous. And of course, one other problem that they had was they actually forgot to relate to each other, like how to be in a classroom of 30 students. and um, and they were like very touchy in the sense that they would not allow, of course they were wearing masks and all those things in the beginning, but the general the social distancing whatever has also caused them a certain, it's almost like each one had their own barrier around them. And because of that barrier they have around that, that what we call as a personal space expanded. So like even a tap on the shoulder would actually kind of agitate certain kids to to levels that we usually do not see. So when they came back in the beginning of the year, we saw a lot of interpersonal conflicts with our students. uh, but at the hindsight, we are getting better. And if the situation is if it were to repeat, we are better equipped now than we ever were. And uh, the ethics of teaching, ethics of what entail teaching. So earlier it was like, okay, I have to give the same test to everybody because that's the fair way of doing it. But the concept of fairness in education, uh, that has to be reevaluated, because whenever the kids were not there for an entire year, they had limited resources. Sometimes even though the children were healthy, they had to stay back home because they had older grandparents. They had parents who had immuno compromises. So big to ensure that the parents were safe or grandparents were safe, some of the students chose to stay at home the entire year last year, even though we opened the schools. So uh, it's not like the students chose the easy way out, but the situation was such that they could not come to classroom even though they were willing to come to classroom because of the home situation. So whenever we designed our assessment, whenever I'm giving my grades, now I have to look at it from the point of view of, okay, did the student get all the resources needed to succeed in this test, like the student in the classroom. So now that idea of fairness, treating everybody equally, the equality versus equity. So now we have to kind of arrange different levels of, like there is a picture, right? Like to make them all equal, it's not like you give them the same tools, you have to give them different tools. So the shortest one has to be given the highest tool to stand on. That literally is 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 what we are having to do in order to ensure that all our students feel some kind of success in education. And this is pretty much what I had. I actually had a presentation, but on the computer I'm not able to show. So uh, I'm going to stop with this. If you have any questions.
Thank you, ma'am. It was, nice to hear. And I don't have a question actually, but a comment. As you mentioned, you don't know what is happening in India. So as we are, teaching maybe students who are adults, who are supposed to be, adult, matured people, 22-year old, uh, those students, today we had a morning session. From morning onwards we had several sessions, seminars. They are not ready to communicate, they are not ready to in a physical situation, they are not ready to come up with some questions, some comments, but they can communicate like anything in WhatsApp or in the social media platform. So it is such an alarming situation, not just for school kids, even for the adults, the so-called matured people. They face this situation. And for school kids, my son is studying in fourth standard, and I find it is totally devastating for them. They don't have any kind of social skills. They had classes, they learned portions, but in connection with the social contact, it is nil. Almost they are like barbaric kind of set of people. Not just with small kids, even the college students, they are so introvert nowadays, but they are so extrovert in the social media platforms. Maybe we are in the age of metaverse or something. I don't know, but I felt truly interesting the way you presented it. It was wonderful to hear from you, ma'am. Thank
Thank
you.
you.